and Energy Forum had a fascinating discussion with 8 energy and climate experts, looking at some of the challenges that there are around achieving the, well, we've got a couple of deadlines. The government set itself a 2050 deadline for carbon neutrality. The International Panel on Climatic Change has given us a deadline of 2030, which is obviously not that far away. So interesting discussion yesterday, looking at the challenges that we face and possible ways of trying to overcome those barriers. Particularly pertinent yesterday, obviously, as the government released its 10-point plan for achieving what it says is its green revolution. It has come in for a lot of criticism from environmental experts and organisations, including some of the panellists on the discussion during the Insights Festival yesterday. And one of the issues is that it's a bit of a sticking plaster, and it's not actually going to get to the root cause of the problems around climate change, the release and the production of carbon dioxide, and the various other environmental issues that we're having to wake up to big time at the moment. So there's a lot of feeling that if we wait for the government to set everything in place, that actually we're probably not going to get there. And so there have been many people, many organisations, many companies deciding that it's up to them to do what they can to tackle this, to do their part on reducing their environmental footprint. And global market research company Nielsen last year carried out a big survey involving thousands of people around the world. It was called Consumers Buy the Change That They Want to See in the World. And this was asking them about their attitudes towards buying ethically and sustainably. Interesting statistics for company is that 81% of the public believe that companies must be doing whatever they can to play their part in reducing the climate crisis and the environmental crisis. So there's a really big movement out there, big incentive, big push for companies to be playing their part too. And I'm pleased to say that many companies are. I recently wrote an article for Punchline magazine looking at 25 companies around Gloucestershire where I live who have been greener, and the results were just so inspiring. So that led to the creation of this session this morning, Greening Your Business, How Difficult Can It Be?, where I wanted to invite 3 people, 3 companies who I know are doing incredible things to green their business, because for a company that's starting down this road, it might seem incredibly complicated and difficult. So we hope that by the end of the session, you're going to be inspired and you'll have lots of takeaways that you can start implementing where you are straight away. So I'm going to introduce my 3 guests this morning. We have Sarah Townsend, who is a freelance marketing copywriter and author of a book that's been recently published and seems to be doing great guns. It's even been mentioned in Forbes recently. And the book is entitled Survival Skills for Freelancers. She's written recently a blog called Environmental Policy Behave, I'm a Freelancer, chronicling all the events, all the activities that she's done to play her part in tackling our environmental situation and problems. Matt Busby is the owner and director of the Name Label Company. The company supplies personalised name labels for schools and camp markets, as well as the care and nursing sectors in the UK, Europe, the USA. And it's based in Tewkesbury and employs 5 people. And lastly, I have Chris Pitt with me, who's head of responsible business for the insurance company Ecclesiastical. He creates and drives the responsible business strategy for this 130-year-old company, which offers a range of insurance solutions for churches, homes, charities, heritage, educational institutions, and care settings. It's in the process of moving to new premises, new purpose-built premises in Gloucester, and employs 1,800 staff. And I would also like to say thank you to Lisa Sweeting, who's been our technical guru for this morning and keeping me on track and basically making sure that we all finish on time. And also a big thanks to the Business Insights Festival team. They have done an incredible work of putting this festival together. It started out as a Gloucestershire Business Show, which was supposed to take place as a physical show at Cheltenham Town Hall back in June this year. Of course, we then had what else but the pandemic and lockdown. And then it was rescheduled to this week, these dates. So twice now, they've almost got a physical show ready to go. And then at the very last minute, they've had to change it to this online festival. But the first one was so successful that it has actually gone around the world and now has international partners in America, South America, and other places too, South Africa. So an incredible positive thing has come out of it, and it's now going to be a regular occurrence in the Gloucestershire Business Show year. So yeah, big thank you and congratulations to them for keeping smiling through all of this. Right, so how do you green your business? How difficult can it be? Is it really hard? In past years, obviously, there's always been a sort of feeling like, oh, I can't green my business because it's too expensive. You know, I can only do it when, you know, we've got enough money or we've got enough time. But, you know, is that really the case? Sarah, I'm going to turn to you first. As I mentioned, you've got your great blog, Environmental Policy, Behave I'm a Freelancer, which I guess that title might sum up how a lot of freelancers might see the whole subject. So could you just sort of describe to me some of the green activities, the green measures that you've taken on board and implemented?
Yeah, so first of all, I guess very briefly in answer to your question, I don't believe any business is too small to lessen their own impact on the planet. And I think it's such an important thing to do. I think in a way it's almost easier as a company of one to take positive action because you don't have committees or people who have to approve the steps that you want to take. So for me, my business is just me. I've been a freelancer by way of background, working from home predominantly for the past 21 years. So the steps that I've taken are things that I've kind of done gradually over the years as a natural eco warrior, misspelling entirely intended. And yeah, I signed up for renewable electricity from Good Energy back in 2003 when they first set out, and they were really blazing a trail then. A lot of the other energy companies have kind of jumped on the bandwagon since. And yeah, since then I've even got shares in the company because I approve of what they're doing so well. I've also invested in solar panels, which is the one big expensive investment that I've made as my business. However, that is already massively starting to repay itself in terms of the FIT scheme payments that I'm getting back from it. One other thing that I do as much as I possibly can is I live in a reasonably large home, and it's generally speaking just me here. So I refuse to put the heating on when it's just me. What you can't see is I have the world's thickest jumper on my lap, keeping me warm, which I'll be putting back on as soon as we finish the chat today. I very much am an advocate of adding extra layers before sticking the heating on, and to avoid heating bills and less so the cost, really the environmental impact of heating the home. I will think about working outside of the home as often as I possibly can. So for me, before COVID, my second office was very much the lounge bar at my gym. So they're already heating, they have great coffee, they have fast Wi-Fi, you know, what's not to love? So plenty of steps, plenty of obvious things, such as being an early adopter of recycling, also doing things that people don't necessarily think about, like selling and buying on eBay, which is in itself often a form of recycling. I'm a heavy supporter of charity shops. I don't like throwing anything away because I have this idea in the back of my mind of something sitting in landfill somewhere and never biodegrading. So I use what used to be called free cycle sites to kind of give away things that I no longer need. You'll be amazed what people will have that you think could be useful to nobody. So yes, give things away. Think about the little steps that you can take in terms of recycling. Printing as little as possible, using the backs of every piece of paper, recycling cartridges. Because for my business I can't, and particularly when I publish survival skills for freelancers, I had to print off my manuscript a number of times and I couldn't really avoid doing that. So to kind of offset that, as it were, I started making a monthly donation to the Woodland Trust. And I've kept that up. That's something that I always do. So yeah, I've taken numerous steps, and I call it in the blog post, I kind of did it a little bit tongue in cheek because I had written this down and I didn't think anybody would ever be interested in reading about the steps that just me as a business owner had made. And it's actually remarkable how many other freelancers and company of one type businesses have taken inspiration from that and have actually kind of looked at the steps that I've set out in that blog and gone, oh, well, that's actually something that I'm not doing that I could be doing. And they've also since then started their own environmental manifesto and shared that themselves. So from my perspective, I call it my utterly imperfect, but it's a start plan. Hope it inspires a few people.
I don't know about being perfect. It's pretty impressive what you've managed to do. You've sort of covered a lot of different bases there, from energy to recycling to actually how you approach purchasing as well. And I think that's an interesting point, is that none of us can be completely green. There is no such thing as being perfectly green. We live in a society which is so embedded in how we live in many ways, particularly around transport, that it's actually very, very difficult to be completely green. And I think it's important that people don't take that guilt away with them by going, oh, you know, I'm not doing everything I possibly can, you know, I'm a bad person. So great. Matt, you've actually running a company. It's a manufacturing company, I believe, and you've got 5 people. So obviously a bit of a different, much bigger setup to what Sarah's got. Can you just outline some of the ways that you've introduced sustainability into the name label company?
Sure, yeah, we've done it in very small steps, and you know, we've looked at the processes that we have in production, and much like Sarah, you know, looking at our purchasing and stuff like that. So yeah, the sort of first mark in the ground for us was to get the ISO 14001 standard and sort of start to working towards that standard. And then from that, then we went on and dealt with Ian McQuone from Sustainable Business Design, who really helped us figure out what our carbon equivalent footprint was, and then, you know, sort of steered us in areas where we could make improvements. So we started off on some fairly small things, but, you know, they had quite a big impact in the business. The first one was when we calculated the carbon equivalent footprint, is the staff commuting to work was one of our biggest areas. So what we decided to do was have this low carbon day, if you like, and that was going to be that the 2 staff coming from Tewkesbury would share a ride, a member staff we got living in Cheltenham would work from home, and then Emma, my wife, and myself, who live just in the next village over, would either walk or cycle in. So this was going to be done once a week, and we'd see how it goes. And it worked out so well, and actually driven a lot by the staff, that became a full-time thing. So, you know, the guys would share the lift every single day. The member staff from Cheltenham worked 4 days a week at home and then came in, and we walked or cycled to work every single day, and it made such a big difference. And, you know, the benefits, you know, why the staff particularly wanted to do that was the cost saving, you know, for themselves, you know, sharing a ride or working from home made such a big difference. And then we had a look at some of the things that we could do within the production area, within the business itself. And, you know, we are very fortunate. We're in a fantastic office here on the Overbury estate where, you know, we've got air source underfloor heating, you know, well insulated building. It's a superb place. So that was a great place to start. But then we looked at stuff like putting lines on the thermostat for the heating in the production area. So, you know, we'd put it up at, you know, 19, 20 degrees or something like that. So it's not to go beyond that. Now, if somebody is feeling cold, you know, we let them go beyond that. But, you know, I might go in and have a bit of a raised eyebrow and saying, oh, it's a bit warm in here. Does it need to be such? And so, you know, we could monitor and measure things from there. And then just, you know, simple things like on the kettle, you know, we put on lines where it's 1 cup, 2 cups, 3 cups. And so, you know, you get a bit of an idea that you don't have to overfill a kettle. And they are just the real basics, but it has made a difference. And then I suppose the thing that really did it for us is when we looked at what we were doing and then we started measuring what we were doing, then we could start putting in targets to drive down. And one of our biggest thing was the waste. You know, we could fill up a 360 litre bin once a week. But when we, you know, put that down as a target to reduce that, you know, we have significantly reduced the waste in the business. You know, so much so is that we probably could have a collection once every 3 weeks now, except for a very small period when we're extremely busy. But, you know, that has been driven by the staff reducing waste, and it's been a very positive impact. Not only saving money for us, but also, what we're sending out to landfill.
Do you think that process of actually analysing to begin with, going, well, this is where we are now, getting a stock take of your environmental performance at the start of it all, and then creating those targets, do you think that has really helped to drive the change?
Yeah, massively. It's one of those things where we're probably doing some bits, we've always been kind of environmentally aware, and we've already done a little bit, but, it was only once we actually physically wrote down what we were doing, what we were, like sending out to waste, and then working out what our target is, how much do we want to reduce that by, and then everybody fully went on board to drive those, drive that down and make sure that we hit those targets. And, the targets that we did after the first year of working for Ian, two of our biggest areas was waste and then the employee commute to work. And, we set in, a reasonably, ambitious target. And, with help of COVID, obviously, we've absolutely smashed those targets. So it is amazing how once you get the target and you're focused on it, what you are able to achieve.
And you've obviously, you keep talking about a lot of enthusiasm for the staff. So the staff have got behind this right from the word go, have they? I mean, how do you harness that enthusiasm?
Well, it was driven by our staff to take this low carbon day to, a full-time thing. So, they were fully on board with that. And, and they've come to me with ideas, had we thought about this, what about doing that? So, it's very encouraging. They're young guys, and you would expect them to be sort of environmentally aware, but the way that they've taken it on board and really grasped the nettle to say, right, we're part of this, and we're going to do our bit within the business has been so encouraging.
Did you find you were surprised when you did that first sort of stock take of like, this is where we are, this is where we're starting from? Did you find that you were all surprised about, what you were doing, the amount of waste you're producing or energy using?
Probably not so much surprised, but I suppose the surprise for me was how blasé we were about it. It was obviously not that important because we weren't bothering to measure it. But actually, when we started to measure it, we saw how important it was. And there's the double benefit. There's the benefit of what we're sending out to waste, but there's the cost saving. Because we're not throwing away, we're not spoiling a load of stuff there because we're conscious on our waste. So it's been a double bubble for us on that.
Yeah, fantastic. That is very inspiring. Chris, moving to you, obviously, other end of the scale, definitely from Sarah. Matt's sitting there somewhere in between. 1,800 staff, and getting you're having a new purpose-built building constructed at the moment. So that sounds like it's much more challenging situation than either for Sarah or Matt, particularly around, as Sarah alluded to earlier, the fact that you have got huge numbers of people who need to be involved in the decision making. What type of action has Ecclesiastical taken?
Well, I would say, and I'd start off actually, that it doesn't matter how small or big your business is, the starting point needs to be the same. And I think that is asking yourself a really clear and honest question about what is your impact on the world? What is your environmental impact? Because I think I see all too often organisations losing credibility with their environmental agenda by saying, look how much we recycle over here. But look at our vast supply chain that is using huge amounts of materials and resources and not doing it responsibly. So I think that starting point, whether you're Sarah or Ecclesiastical, what is my impact and how do I mitigate it? And that kind of sense of, what ripples do we make in the world kind of thing? And are they good ones? Are they bad ones? How do we mitigate them? How do we reduce our impact in the world overall? So I think that needs to be everyone's starting point. And we're a financial services business. So although we are 1,800 people, we're not a very big business. We don't have huge premises. We have offices that, have computers in and we turn lights on and off, and we have surveyors that go around the country. So we do have an impact and a direct impact we really need to think about and manage. But for us, there's a bigger, broader question about, what is our responsibility as far as climate change goes? Where is our opportunity to influence? Yeah. And in that space, There's some really interesting and challenging questions about how we inform our customers about the impact of climate change, about flood risk and things like that. How we invest our money is a big thing, and how we influence other organisations to be greener. So I think, think about those questions, where's our biggest opportunity for impact? But then I think, that there is the practical, tangible space of, what impact we make on the world day to day, and how can we reduce it? And our new office at Gloucester Business Park is a great example of it. So what decisions we're making around that, in every respect, affect how sustainable a building it's going to be. And for me, that is a broad question about, what kind of impact does that have in that community? So we've started some volunteering pre-lockdown, unfortunately, to improve a green space that's right next to the office. So we've been planting trees and bulbs. So making the place a greener and better environment. And you wouldn't have thought that, is that the kind of thing you need to think about when you're thinking about your direct impact? But yeah, I think it should be actually, improving the environment for us and the community that we're in. But then we've also held ourselves to some standards. So I think the conversation about ISO kind of standards and accreditations are good things, I think, to hold yourself to. So we're building the building to a BREEAM very good standard, which is the top 25% of buildings. We don't need to, many buildings aren't, but it's a good kit to say, well, okay, this is what the standards would look like. So we've got solar panels on the roof, that kind of thing. We're also designing it to a Fitwell standard, which is a well-being standard. And again, I think that's an interesting example of sustainability in a broader sense. So that looks at how light an area of the building is, how good access to green spaces is for our people, what food we serve in our restaurant and how it's sourced. So there's a kind of a broader sustainability and well-being impact of those decisions, which add up, I think, to make it a great place. And I guess it's important to highlight right now that our office is set to be a really healthy place to be. And I think we always were probably concerned about it in the past, but I think we'll be even more concerned about it in the future.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Just for anybody watching might not know, the BREEAM are actually a whole set of standards for the building of the construction world, for creating a building to be as environmentally friendly as possible, aren't they? So there's a whole list of energy saving targets, energy efficiency, I think, was it type of materials used as well, possibly, is it?
Yeah, and there's some very interesting kind of philosophical debates in that I've wrestled with a bit, like what materials do you use? So, marble for your reception floor, you might have thought, well, that's coming from Italy or something. That's not the best material to use. Surely we should have bamboo flooring or something like that. But that marble is going to last a lot longer than that bamboo. So you are weighing up the kind of carbon footprint of sourcing that material, the longevity of it, to make an overall best sustainable decision right here, right now. So there's a lot of those kind of nuanced decisions I think you have to be quite thoughtful about, and that it's not always, this is obviously the greener choice. It's more complicated.
Yeah, that's true, because that's bringing in something called the circular economy, isn't it? Where actually you're thinking about the end of life. So it's not simply, make or buy, use and then throw away. But it's actually, well, what can you do with that at the end to sort of bring it back round to really make a closed loop of sustainability, which, as you say, those discussions are always ongoing. There's one going on at the moment about plastic bags, because for quite a while now, a lot of environmentalists have been saying, actually, do you realise plastic bags are actually more environmentally friendly than paper bags? But the problem is the actual, in the production of them, the problem is the actual disposal at the end of life. They're things like that have been used, single-use plastic being thrown away, and that is the problem. But actually, if you look at the making of them, they can, and the transporting of them, they can be more environmentally friendly than paper bags. So yeah, it is actually very difficult, isn't it? Because in the environmental sector, we are constantly learning things as well. As you say, you're constantly questioning things. Is that the most environmentally friendly thing to do? Isn't it? And sometimes, yeah, the answers might not be the obvious ones.
Yeah.
And what about your financial investments? I mean, you mentioned that. I mean, obviously where we put our money, how we use our money, could be one of the biggest ways we can make a difference. How did Ecclesiastical deal with that one? Because obviously that's your reason for being.
Yeah, so a big part of our business is an ethical investment firm called Eden Tree, one of the first firms to set up an ethical fund, actually. So yes, they screen companies on ESG, so environmental, social and governance criteria. So they challenge companies on their practices and then therefore make investment decisions based on how good or bad they are. And again, that's on a broad kind of responsible business agenda, how they treat their people, environmental impact, what appropriate profits they make, all those kind of aspects, generally how good a business they are. So yeah, in the financial services world, I think money is a big tool for leverage because it's what we deal in. We take it in, we kind of pay it out, we move money around. So how we use that and how we influence those that we invest in. And I think that, that can apply to every business, talked about it already, where you put your business funds, how you invest, what suppliers you choose to work with, so where you put your money, all of that has a great influence in the world. So I think those more informed decisions and that kind of greater drive for environment and sustainability, if we've all got that and we're all driving it, you can see that things start to move, and we're all making similar decisions, all having similar ambitions, and then we move in the right direction. Because I think individually can't necessarily create all the action we'd like to see.
And I believe, isn't it, that ecclesiastical is actually, it's the way it's set up, is actually set up to generate funds to support charities and good causes, wider society issues, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. We're a different kind of financial services business, not one that I know there are any others out there like. So our profits go to our charitable owner and we distribute them in their own right as well. So yeah, it's not environmental sustainability, but that's a very sustainable and different business model. And if there are any charities listening, by the way, this is an unashamed plug, I'm afraid. We've got a 12 days of giving campaign live at the moment where any charity can win £1,000 for their cause. So yeah, she can spend on anything. So.
That's fantastic, but that is interesting because it means that the drive of your company is slightly different to one that's run by shareholders, because any company that has shareholders, their reason for being, whatever they say they're doing, what they're making or selling, actually their reason for being is to make a profit for the shareholders. And that can actually drive really quite the growth that can be quite damaging, I would think.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that's an interesting theme to pick up here about driving sustainability and driving reducing environmental impact. It does come from a belief, and whether you have that belief within your organisation at the top and throughout it. And I think if you've got that, then I don't think you need to worry too much, actually, because those personal values are going to bear out. You are going to make the right decisions. You are going to do the right things.
Fantastic. Great. So obviously you're all doing, incredible stuff, really impressed. Have you had what are the benefits, do you think? And have you had any surprising benefits that's come out of all this? Sarah, let's start with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that that's something that I just think the benefit for me as a sole trader is the fact that I know I'm doing everything I can. So all the time for me, it's about conscious choices. And I think something that's worth picking up on also, for starters, the new ecclesiastical building is about 10 minutes walk from where I live. So Chris, it's on my circuit, my kind of daily circuit. So I've seen it kind of come together. And I spotted yesterday the charging points for cars there are lots of charging points. There are lots of these kind of things that are quite visible. And I think also if I'm just a member of the public, I'm walking past that building, it's also sending a signal out, which is a useful thing to do. But yeah, something, just circling back quickly to something that Matt and Chris have both alluded to, the commuting, the cost of transport. One of the things that I found has benefited me in terms of my physical and mental well-being is that when I have been able to, outside of COVID times, work at the lounge bar at my gym, it's about a 15-minute walk from my home. So there's no commuting cost in that whatsoever. And then, of course, the benefit for me is that it improves my mental health, my physical health. It's getting me away from the same four walls. It's getting me out among kind of other people, the bars and the atmosphere and that kind of lovely, lively environment. So that for me is the benefit of one of those decisions that I've made to be more environmentally friendly. In terms of other benefits, I would say the fact that I've put it out there. So, I mean, I guess a benefit is getting to talk on panels like this and helping to spread the word among the small business and freelance and self-employed community that there are things you can do and there are positive steps that everybody can take. So helping to spread the word, but also through doing so, attracting other businesses who have become copywriting clients. For example, I've just taken on a new client, First Wealth, who are a B Corp. So they're very driven by sustainability, social, making good choices, very values driven, and have a purpose greater than profit, a sort of social purpose in what they do. So yeah, I guess I certainly didn't do it. And as I mentioned with the blog post, I only went live on the blog post perhaps a year ago. It was actually after listening to Caroline and Ian McCoyne speak at a local event. But that was always there, but I did it for me. I didn't do it with the intention of there being any benefits other than I knew I was reducing my own carbon footprint. So any kind of additional benefits have been very much a bonus on top.
Excellent. And Matt, what about you? Have found benefits?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, and you know, I sort of mentioned them earlier where, you know, I saw the double bubble, whereas we're saving money as well as doing the right thing. But I think just what Sarah said, for me, it's about doing the right thing. And, you know, is we probably, the name label company is not going to make a huge difference to the whole world, but doing our bit is really important to us. And also what was really important is that we did it properly and for the right reasons as well. And I think what probably spurred me onto that is I worked in a business way before I started the name label company where the MD thought, you know, rather cynically, I felt that, yeah, he has a great marketing opportunity. So let me purchase some trees, have a lovely photo up and then say, look at us, we're green, carbon neutral. And it was the biggest greenwash. And actually, you know, it was so disappointing that. And so when we went down this journey, I was determined that we were going to do it properly. We're going to do it right. And hence us going for 14,001. And then also working with Ian McCrone, you know, because he did it properly. And whilst, you know, you might think it's quite daunting to gather all the details and all the information to work out your carbon footprint, I was comforted by the fact that it was a lot of information had to be gathered and we had to jump through a few hoops to get there because it was done properly. It wasn't a greenwash. So, you know, I think just like Sarah, for us, it was the biggest boost for us is that we feel that we're on the right track. We still got a lot more to do, but we're doing it for the right reasons.
And do you think having certifications like 14,001 helps in terms of getting out that message and showing other companies that you're being green now? Because there's lots of certifications. We can get sort of overwhelmed with certifications and numbers and acronyms and whatever. Do you think actually generally helps?
Yeah, I do believe it helps, but I think what we probably don't do.
And have you?
Sorry, yeah, I was going to say, I think it is important, and I think that you know it does work having those certifications. But I think what we don't do is shout about it enough, you know, and you know what we should be doing is saying we've got this, and the reason why we've got this, and why it's a good idea for other people to do that. You know, is we've got some competitors that have got a page on their website, and if you have a look at what they do, what they say they're doing, it's incredible. It's really good, and yet I believe we're doing a lot more than they are, and you know we're probably not shouting about it enough because there is definitely a marketing angle, you know, for it. And you know we've had in the summer in our busy time, you know, we've had a couple of customers who said we have gone with you because you are an environmentally aware company, you know, and it's those sort of customers. It's not going to change their life, but it is important. So, you know, they are there. And I think that sort of you know, people understand that more, and it drives a lot more people. And I think it's only going to get bigger on that.
The UK Small Business Consortium did a survey a few years ago. They were asking small businesses about all sorts of things, but they included sustainability. And interestingly, 43% of small businesses said they had been asked by larger companies up the supply chain about their sustainability practices. So it looks like, you know, the big companies are pushing their sustainability policies down the supply chain and expecting suppliers to adhere to these as well. Are you finding that?
Probably not, but I think it's coming. You know, I think, you know, some of the bigger companies now are having to report on their environmental credentials. And, you know, it's not going to be long before it's pushed down lower and lower to small businesses like ours. And, you know, and also, I can't remember where I read it or saw it, but, you know, people were talking about at some stage, if we were wanting to hit the net zero, you know, there is going to be a carbon tax coming in. And, you know, so, you know, what I'm thinking is I'm getting prepared for that now. I'm getting all my ducks in a row before that comes. And I think it's a good thing. And there are benefits to the business as well.
Right. Thank you. Chris, on a bit of a larger scale, I mean, possibly the attitudes of potential customers is particularly important for a large company to keep itself going and keep all those staff employed. You know, do you find that that's, as Matt was suggesting about that marketing angle, do you find that that's something that the company is considering?
Yeah, and I think as we're alluding there, I think everyone's been asked the question and asking themselves the question as well. So I think having a good answer to your sustainability story and your environmental impact, you know, and being able to express it well, Sarah's job, is, I think, really, really important and really motivating, because I think there's a bit of unease, you know, business is built, you know, are we doing enough? Are we doing the right things? And there's never again, as I've said, there's never you've done it all, you know, you are sustainable now, that's fine. It's a constant challenge and a constantly kind of evolving picture as the world changes around you and as you change. So I think, you know, having a good sustainability story, it feels good, it attracts good people, it's good for your business. You know, it does just make sense on all of those levels. So it is a very motivating thing. But I think, yes, being able to be confidently talk about your impact on the world and how you're mitigating it, you know, not to be underestimated how good that feels, you know, really kind of proud and confident about our place in the world, rather than feeling a bit uneasy that I'm not sure if I am doing the right thing, or I'm not sure if I'm going to be criticised for that. So I think that's a really important thing, not only doing the right thing, but expressing it well as well.
Yeah. And do you find it's helped with recruitment? As I've been reading statistics saying that a huge number of people actually, as long as they've got an income that meets their needs and gives them a decent quality of life, would actually choose working for an ethical company rather than a higher salary. Do you find that is feeding through to your recruitment of new staff?
Absolutely, yeah. It's always a reason why people are attracted to our organisation, but not to say that that's the only reason. They want to work for a very great, successful business as well, doing a great job, and this kind of, you know, marries the two beautifully. So sometimes you can find one or the other. But I think being able to be part of a successful organisation doing a great job that really cares about the world and knows its impact on the world, and we see that across every kind of role, every kind of age. You know, I think this is a pretty universal thing now. I think there's been a bit of perception that this kind of millennial new workforce is the one that's looking for us, and I think there is a drive in that generation. But I think there's something in all of us now that is looking for.
Yeah, and just to switch the question around a little bit, I asked Matt, is ecclesiastical, are you looking to your supply chain, to your suppliers, to have sustainability principles as well? Yeah,
well, I think being a larger business, there's a bit more stick in terms of regulation, things like Modern Slavery Act, the payment practices and performance regulations. So we have to report on, you know, how we pay suppliers and how we ask questions of our supply chain. And I think stick isn't a bad thing, really. You know, it kind of pushes businesses into some decent thinking. But again, I'd say, you know, think about your supply chain. You know, what kind of suppliers do you have? And I guess, you know, IT is probably our biggest supplier of IT equipment, and you know, our money is our main kind of raw material that we use. So, you know, we don't have huge swathes of small businesses that we work with, for example. So I think that kind of practical, honest view of what does your supply chain look like, you know, and within that, what are the greatest impacts? Again, I think that's the perspective you've got to come from. But yes, and I think the rise of focus on supply chain is only set to grow, because again, if you think about your organisation, your impact, and then the connections that you've got with other organisations, and suddenly you've got this huge spider web of influence and potential influence. So we should be looking much broader than our own four walls.
Yeah, absolutely. So the title of this session is Greening Your Business. How difficult can it be? So is it difficult, you know, to a company out there who's just thinking about it and thinking about getting started? Sarah, what did you find any particular challenges to embracing after you'd heard that talk and you thought, right, yeah, I'm going to do what I can? What you felt the next step? What was it like?
Absolutely no difficulty whatsoever. It's all about making conscious, active choices, and it doesn't take any more effort to make a good choice than a bad one. So I would say it certainly isn't a difficult thing. After I heard your talk, that was what spurred me on to publish the blog post, but the environmental manifesto had already existed within my business in secret, not shared with anybody, you know, not intentionally in secret, but it was there if anybody wanted it, but I wasn't shouting about it. So the talk that I heard from you guys was what inspired me to share it. And by sharing it, I have helped other people to start making small steps within their own small and even larger businesses. So I really genuinely believe it's not difficult in any way. It is just very much drilling into what Matt said about being aware of what impact you are currently making. And sometimes you're kind of, it's like you see those programs on TV where they're kind of looking at people's diet through the week, and they go, oh, hey, here's how many bags of sugar you eat during the week. And they're like, what? You know, I had no idea that was the case. Yeah. It's a little bit like that, because you're probably not aware of just how much of an impact you are having, even as a sole trader, a small business. So if you do start off with that benchmark, it's very easy to kind of realize how you can make changes. There are certain different, the waste issue, the supply chain issue, and even from my own perspective, I would prefer to work, say, with a graphic designer or a web designer or a photographer who shares the same values as I do. So even in the small business sense, it can affect everybody. But no, it's certainly not difficult. Please don't be put off by thinking it's an onerous task. It's really not at all.
I mean, for you, it is very much a melding of the personal and the business, isn't it? Because you are your business.
Absolutely.
So, you know, how you live personally is now how you manifested yourself in your business.
Yeah.
Where do you start getting hold of information? Like you sort of thought, oh, well, you know, what do I do about energy? How would you go about sort of thinking, well, what do I do?
In terms of finding out your carbon footprint?
Well, just sort of thinking about what you could do, what green alternatives you could do.
Researching suppliers. Well, there's so much information out there. I believe Which do an annual survey of the energy companies. I went with Good Energy initially because they were I believe the first. Of course, there's Ecotricity, but I think Good Energy were the first to provide 100% renewable electricity.
Yes,
so I went with them, and I've stayed with them ever since. It hasn't cost me more. People think it's going to be more expensive. It's not, but also the little changes like switching every light bulb in your home to can't think of the term, LED?
The LEDs,
yeah. So I've got low energy light bulbs everywhere within my home. So again, knock-on effect of that, sort of the hidden benefit is that you use less electricity because you're thinking mindfully about perhaps switching things off standby, like tiny things. Like I never leave my microwave and my oven switched on with the little clock. I'm sure it uses probably about £1 a day or something, but I've got a perfectly good clock in my kitchen already. You know, use the switch at the wall. It's not, it doesn't take any more time. It doesn't cost you any money. It's just thinking. We go through life so often making these almost blinkered kind of automated robotic choices because that's the way we've always done things. But that's what needs to stop. We need to start just challenging those everyday decisions and making better choices. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yes, and I certainly think that there are sources of information you can go to for making it simple. You mentioned Which. Yeah, I used to get Which, and they do that survey, and Good Energy and Ecotricity as well used to consistently come out as some of the top providers of energy, but customer service as well. But there is something called Ethical Consumer Magazine, which looks at different aspects of what we consume and really drills down into, well, what is the most environmentally friendly way of tackling that subject. They look at companies, they assess the ethical and sustainability credentials of the company. So yeah, there are websites out there like My Green Pod, which again, they do a similar type of thing. Was it Green Springboard? Green Springboard does a review of options to look at the greenish. So yeah, our internet is our friend, often with a lot of these different types of things.
Can I also add something very briefly? I love the fact that, Chris, you call it the sustainability story of your business, and I think that's really key. I think the question that you asked about the certification, the problem that a lot of businesses have with marketing is that they'll send out a press release saying, great news, we are ISO blah, blah, blah certified. Actually, most people couldn't care less. How does that affect your business? Lead from a story angle. So tell the personal stories of why you're doing it and what it's actually meant to you as a business. Use it as an opportunity to help people get to know you as a business and to really understand and appreciate your values by telling those little human stories. Don't lead with the certification. That's just kind of, from a marketing perspective, I just think that's a no-no. That sort of it shrieks of kind of going, oh hey, look at us, aren't we great? We're certified in this and we're certified in that. It is great, and it is an important thing to do if your business is at that place or you're at that level, but don't lead on that. That's all I'm saying from a marketing perspective, because the stories are so much more compelling, and the why and the what you as a team have got out of it. That's just what I would say from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would entirely agree with that. Matt, what challenges, do you find any challenges?
No, I think it's, to answer the question, no, it's very easy to do these things in your business, and you probably find you're doing quite a bit of them already. And it's worth just seeing what you're doing and start measuring what you're doing so that you can get targets in place to reduce. And a lot of the stuff you can do without, like Sarah, without the certification. You don't need the ISO, you don't need, the carbon neutral certificate, although, it's, for me, it holds me to those standards, and it also helps me measure everything. So that's important, but you can do it without. But I would say, when I went to the talk with Ian McCrone, it gave me so much things to think about and pointed me in the right directions to get stuff done. So, the forums like that, I think, are absolutely brilliant. And, I was really grateful that I was able to attend that one and get the sort of input and steer from Ian on our journey.
Well, you mentioned earlier about putting down the thermostat, so that this temperature was a little bit lower, about 18 or so. Do you find that any of the staff might think, oh, this is all about wearing a hair shirt? It's actually all about us in some way. Disadvantage is a bit of a strong word, but so like suffering a little bit. I'm to put up with being a bit colder, or it's it's just not as attractive.
No, I don't think it's. I think they appreciate it, and sometimes I don't begrudge anybody if they're really feeling cold. Put the temperature up if you want to, but I'll go and make the joke. I said, right, I know what I got you for Christmas: a hat and the gloves. So we and they know the importance of that. It's not a bind for them. And like I said right at the beginning, I think a lot of this is driven by them as well. So
yeah. Did you set up a special staff team, or is it
just in our sort of like team meetings when we discussed things? As we said that we were going to go for ISO and why it was important to the company to have ISO 9000 and 14000, and then we had input from them. And then when we said we wanted to take it to the next step to go carbon neutral, and why that was important to us and important to the business, you know, fully on board and fully committed to it. So it's, you know, but we've got great staff. So, I mean, it's very easy when you've got great staff.
Yes, that's fantastic. Chris, on a bigger scale, has that presented more challenges?
No, I think as I kind of started the conversation, I think that the big challenge is to be credible in your environmental agenda, in your business. You know, focus on your organisation's real impact. You know, what you use, what you waste, and focus on how you can reduce that. I think if you start there, you're in a great place. Because I think, you know, when we look at our building, our current building even, and our future one, turning the thermostat down half a degree on the cooling for our server room is going to create a vast difference in comparison to doing a bit of recycling. So I remember when we were looking at our carbon footprint and the kind of negligible impact that actually waste creates, as opposed to the big slice of business travel impact. So, you know, make sure you look at it quite materially. So, you know, one of the biggest and most important changes we are all making right now is kind of flexible working. You know, how we change our living and working habits. So that's where we're spending an awful lot of time as an organisation, investing in how we think about it, how we promote it, how we support it. So how we're going to use that future office space that we've got. So yeah, I think look across the piece, and I think if you do it credibly, so you're not encouraging people to recycle, that's the only thing they can do to make a difference, but we are making these other changes that you can see what a difference they're going to make to our organisation. I think you'll be on the right path. Yeah. And I think that's not to say also there's a bit of a balance to that, because I think people need to see and feel the difference as well, and also feel that they're in control of it and they are empowered and they play a part in it. So, you know, the small decisions you make about recycling, switching that off, I think are significant. So I think, again, as long as you build the story, here's our overall impacts, here are the organisational changes we're going to make and the supply chain decisions that we're going to make. But then also here's the things that you individually can do to create an impact as well.
So how have you brought all the staff on, how you take them along with you? How do you deal with that communication internally amongst the staff as to what you're doing and why?
Well, I think it does start a little bit with that kind of treasuring what you measure. So knowing what your impact is and knowing your numbers and knowing where your opportunity to make a difference is. So, you know, this is our carbon footprint and this is the slice of it that we think we should reduce. And this is how we can do it. And I think if you lead people through that journey, it makes sense. And I think that maybe is some of the challenge that we all do feel, that we're all good people. We want to do the right thing. It makes so much sense. Why isn't some of this happening? And I think if you approach it in the right way, if you understand what your impact is, if you measure it well, if you tell great stories about how you can reduce it, if you circle back to what a difference you've made by doing those things, I think you'll move forward in the right way.
Do you have a sort of internal staff committee looking at these issues, or newsletters?
Yeah, we've got various internal networks. We've actually got an Office Life network, we're calling it, which is representatives from all of the departments in Gloucester who are representing every kind of interest and challenge that we're going to face with the new office. You know, how we get to it, how we work in it, what kind of environment it is for us. So yeah, listening to those voices I think is really important, and you know, really understanding personal challenges as well. And I guess this period has also taught us that home and work aren't completely separate things. You know, we're merging the two now. So how we think about our overall impact on the world day to day is a bit of a different thing now.
And that must be a bit of a challenge actually for a company if you're trying to do something like measure your carbon footprint. You know, how do you work out what your staff are doing when they're at home? You know, the carbon footprint at home, because obviously that needs to be taken account of as well somehow. But that must be a bit of a challenge.
It will be, yes.
So we're almost at the end of our session now. It's been a fascinating discussion. Thank you. I just want to ask you the last question, to name one thing for people who are watching, one thing that you could advise them that they could go away and do tomorrow. Sarah.
Okay, mine's quite generic advice, and it's just start. Like John F. Kennedy said, one person can make a difference and everyone should try. I honestly think just make the first step and the rest will be easy.
Great, thank you. And Matt?
I don't know how I can follow that. That's exactly what I do. You've got to start somewhere. Just put a stake in the ground and go from there. It is easy.
Yeah.
There's a lot you can do.
Any practical thing that you could do? Practical action, maybe one thing.
Turn off the lights. You know, you don't need every single light on in the building. You know, in our production area, we've got banks of strip lighting. You know, we only use 2 of the 5 banks that we have. We don't need them all on. So that's one little thing.
Yeah. And Chris?
I'm just going to say, be more confident. I think we know what our impact is. We know what we can do about it, and get on with it quite confidently. Don't be afraid. I think there's a lot of conversation and a lot of external challenge and a lot of potential kind of criticism on lots of these agendas. But be confident and proud of what you do, and get on with doing better. You know, don't let that hold you back.
Great, fantastic, yeah, lovely. Well, it's been so fascinating hearing all of the work that you've been doing and all your stories. And I just realised, of course, I didn't introduce myself at the beginning of this session. I was busy introducing everybody else. I'm Caroline Aistrom, and I run a green PR agency called Green Spark, and I help people to tell their sustainability story. So I was really pleased to hear Sarah raising that issue, because that is often what is overlooked in all of this process. Is that it's great that you do it, but if you don't get that story out there, then not only are you losing business opportunities, but yeah, you're losing opportunity to persuade other people to be greener as well. So that'd be great. Sarah, Matt, Chris, thank you very much for today. For a fascinating session, and hopefully we've inspired people who are watching and they're hurrying off as we speak to go out to switch off those lights, to look for their local green or a green energy supplier, or just have confidence to get started. But thank you all again, and thanks for watching.